Good evening. I'm Melissa Ridgen with your APTN News Weekend. Leaders from the Union of BC Indian Chiefs and the Hailsek Nation held a press conference this week to unveil shocking new footage of police handcuffing a 12-year-old Indigenous girl and her grandpa at a BMO branch in Vancouver where they were simply trying to open a bank account. Here's Lee Wilson with the latest.
CCTV footage of Vancouver Police Department officers putting handcuffs on Maxwell Johnson and his 12-year-old granddaughter on a busy Vancouver street has been shared publicly for the first time. In 2019, VPD responded to a 911 call from a Bank of Montreal branch where Johnson and his granddaughter were suspected of committing fraud over the use of an Indian status card in an attempt to open the girl's first bank account. Today, in an online press conference giving an update on the incident, Maxwell Johnson said the past 2 years have been hard, but they will move forward in his fight to create change within the VPD.
I know deep down in my heart, I know this is something that needs to be done not only for my family, but for our community and other First Nations people and other people of color. And just want to thank everybody for their outgoing support. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Last year, Johnson and his granddaughter filed a BC human rights case against VPD, alleging they were racially profiled, which led to their detainment. In early 2021, Vancouver Police Department responded, denying discrimination. We reached out to the Vancouver Police Department. They stated they could not comment due to the incident being under review with the Office of Police Complaints Commissioner. At the press conference, lawyer and advocate Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond said she is applying for an intervention in the human rights case this week on behalf of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs.
So that we can be sure that the British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal has all of the information that might be helpful for them to understand the situation and understand the level of concern that the Chiefs of British Columbia have and the Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs has about this situation.
Grand Chief Stuart Phillip of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs had fiery words for the treatment of Johnson and his granddaughter. Their leadership is calling for change from the VPD in their treatment of all people of color.
We totally condemn the VPD. They have a long record of racism, abuse to people of color, of not defending the fundamental human rights of people of color.
The Hailsek leadership supports their members Maxwell Johnson and his granddaughter and their human rights fight.
Yeah, we don't agree, with statements being made that it does not exist within the Vancouver Police Department. It is very alive, and this is something that why we're here today to stand up, against that, and make sure that we can do everything that we can to stop it and make those changes that need to be made.
They also shared a Strongest Leader campaign, which brings awareness about fighting racism and highlights the story of the case. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
Ottawa says they will implement call to action number 17 from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It asks that all levels of government enable residential school survivors and their families to reclaim Indigenous names that were stripped from them by the residential school system. Immigration Minister Marco Mendicino said that the new initiative is effective immediately and is a way of showing their commitment to reconciliation.
Indigenous individuals can now apply to reclaim their names as written on passports and other identity documents. While Call to Action 17 specifically referenced passports, as the Minister, we have gone further and are including replacement travel documents, including citizenship certificates and permanent resident cards. As well, it will apply not only to residential school survivors and their families, but to all Indigenous people in Canada, and it will be totally free.
The Ontario government is pledging $10 million in support of identifying and commemorating residential school burial sites. The announcement was made by Treaty 3 leaders this week. Premier Doug Ford spoke virtually from Kenora, saying that his government won't wait around for federal support to explore 12 sites that are believed to be located across Ontario. Francis Kavanagh said the discovery of the Kamloops burial site has had a widespread impact.
Not only survivors are impacted, It's all of First Nations people in Canada are impacted by this discovery. With that, miigwech again to the government for making this happen today. Miigwech.
Cultural ceremonies were held to honor the 215 children that were found buried in unmarked and undocumented graves on the former Kamloops residential school site. Artina House was there, and she has this story.
As a traditional honors song was performed here on the shoreline of the Thompson River, tobacco was put in the water as part of a ceremony to bring home the spirits of the many children who were forced onto cattle trucks from across BC and brought to the Kamloops Indian Residential School. For many family members and survivors, today was very emotional. The Adams Lake Indian Band organized this event to finally bring home the spirits of their children who attended the residential school. Many survived, but left a part of themselves trapped inside this building after enduring horrific abuses, and others never made it home.
The 215 found in the graves. I'm going to honor them with some prayers, with some songs, with some unity.
Countless stories have emerged of former students who would run away through this field to get away from the school and end up here at the Red Bridge, but they didn't know which way was home. They would eventually be caught and brought back to the school and severely punished. A walk was organized to bring those spirits home, and it began on the Red Bridge with close to 400 descendants, survivors, supporters, and leaders. We met Leonard Ignace along the walk.
My three sisters went to the residential school here, and they all passed away because of the abuse they suffered in there. It wasn't a good story.
The walkers then gathered in the Powwow Arbor before going the rest of the way. The discovery of the 215 graves of children as young as 3 years old was heavy on everyone's minds, knowing that just steps away, they laid there in unmarked graves until now, confirming what survivors have been saying for years.
Some carried this for 80 years, 70, 60, 50, 40 years. They carried these memories. They carried these stories. So these children today, they've shown themselves to the world, and they've shown themselves for a very specific purpose. It's to heal.
Cookbee Roseanne Casimir, chief of the Kamloops Tissaquepum, says her community will continue to offer full support to all the nations that want to conduct ceremonies for the children found so far. And with that, the Walking the Spirits Home walk began with elders in wagons pulled by teams of horses, kids being pushed in strollers, and families and supporters walking to honor the lost children. We caught up with Leonard Ignace again as the walkers were leaving the school grounds. What are your thoughts when you see that building?
Trauma, abuse, physical, mental, sexual. And I just want to flaming arrow. It's just an eyesore for all the victims of what happened. Every time they drive by, I imagine they're just bringing back memories of what happened to them.
The walk lasted 3 days and ended 65 kilometers away on the Adams Lake Indian Band traditional territory, with drummers lined up welcoming the spirits of the children home, finally. Tina House, APTN National News, to Kamloops.
Members of Parliament who aren't running again in the next federal election got to say their farewells in the House of Commons this week. Well, and for the most part, it was about cherished memories and thanking colleagues. But then it was the MP for Nunavut's turn, and Mumala Kakak did not mince words.
I have never felt safe or protected in my position, especially within the House of Commons. Often having pep talks with myself in the elevator or taking a moment in the bathroom stall to maintain my composure. When I walk through these doors, not only am I reminded of the clear colonial house on fire I am willingly walking into, I am already in survival mode. Since being elected, I expect to be stopped by security at my workplace. I've had security jog after me down hallways, nearly put their hands on me, and racial profile me. People like me don't belong here in the federal institution. I'm a human being who wants to use this institution to help people, but the reality is that this institution and the country has been created off the backs, trauma, and displacement of Indigenous people.
It's been 1 year since the fatal police shooting of Rodney Levi at a house barbecue in Sunnybrook, New Brunswick. Levi's family held a day of events to honor him and renewed their calls for justice. Angel Moore reports.
Community members gathered on the weekend to honor the memory of Rodney Levi.
We're gathering over at the school gym, and we're going to just be there in solidarity and just show that, we're not going to just sit down and let this blow over. They took a real life. They took a real human.
Becky Levi remembers the day her uncle, 48-year-old Rodney Levi of Metapanagiog First Nation, was killed by RCMP.
The fight's not over. We're going to see this through. When
RCMP were called to a disturbance at a home and say Rodney approached the officer with a knife and perceived Rodney as a threat. Chief Bill Ward was shocked.
I couldn't believe it. The call that I got was kind of, it was a hard call to take. He wasn't a violent person. He was a gentle guy. He was too friendly, and it was shocking and devastating.
The investigation found the shooting was suicide by police, and no charges were laid against the officer. The Levi family disagrees.
I just don't want to see it happen to another family, and I just want there to be change.
The Levi family hopes a coroner's inquest on October 4th will provide answers. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Chipuktuk, also known as Halifax.
We need to take a break, but when we come back, an incredible new fishing fight between Migma and Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Stay with us. Welcome back. According to court documents and emails obtained by APTN, a Migma First Nation is taking legal action against Canada after discovering that their commercial fishing license was refuted at the last minute following objections from a non-Indigenous Fishermen's Association and concerns over the 2019 federal election. Angel Moore reports.
This is Gaspé-Gawagi. It means the last acquired land, located in the Gaspé region of Quebec. It's a reference to the westernmost part of Migma territory. It's also the home of Listugush Migma Nation, who have been fishing lobster here since time immemorial. For the last 20 years, they've had a commercial fishery in the spring and food and ceremonial fishery in the fall, where the catch is shared with community members. But under Canadian law, it cannot be sold, unlike the commercial fishery. Yet fishing is expensive, gear, fuel, and crew add up. So Listugush developed a plan to sell some of the lobster from the food fishery catch to cover the costs.
But it's not an unregulated fishery. It's not an unmanaged fishery. There are principles in the way we manage and govern this fishery.
Fred Metallic is Director of Natural Resources in Listugush. He spoke with APTN in 2019 after negotiations for a commercial license for the band's fall food fishery fell apart, but before all the details of what went on behind the scenes fully came to light.
Deeply disappointed, disheartened, and frustrated as well.
According to court documents, in 2019, after months of negotiations, Listugush made a tentative deal with the Department of Fisheries. A commercial license would be granted for the fall lobster fishery. But at the last minute, the feds pulled out.
It does, I think, rattle the confidence of communities when they can get so far in discussions with the DFO only to have them about face at the last minute. It doesn't make for an easy relationship.
Listugush lawyer Zachary Davis is representing Listugush in a judicial review, a legal action where a government's decision is challenged before a federal court judge. A paper trail from court documents and an access to information request shows how the commercial fishery deal fell through just one day before the fishery was to begin. And Listugush alleges that political considerations by the Liberal government trumped Migma treaty rights. According to court documents, Listugush Chief Darcy Gray was informed over the phone that the 2019 fall commercial license was refused due to electoral and industry concerns.
La Gaspésie est empreinte d'une riche tradition de pêche.
Meanwhile, DFO emails obtained through access to information show that meetings with a non-Indigenous fishermen's organization from the Gaspé, known as RPPSG, reveal their objections against the Listugush fishery. In this meeting summary, the DFO paraphrases the director of RPPSG, O'Neill Cloutier, as saying in French that giving Migma more fishing rights in the name of reconciliation is discrimination towards whites, and that doing so will lead to an alienation of whites, and concerns that more bands will ask for the same thing.
It is unfortunate that Mr. Cloutier feels that he's being victimized here, but he's not the victim. The victim really are the Migma communities that were dispossessed of resources that are their ancestral heritage for generations.
While Canada does have an obligation to consult industry, the Supreme Court of Canada 1999 decision upheld treaty rights, that the Migma have a right to fish to earn a moderate livelihood.
It doesn't make sense that I would recognize your right and then quiet your right. Then you're not really recognizing that right.
Quite frankly, the Supreme Court was very clear in the Marshall decision that it may result in a disruption to how the fishery is governed now. And that just simply is one of the consequences of the constitutional recognition of treaty rights.
Bonjour tout le monde. Emails and court documents also reveal that members of the Gaspé fishermen, including Cloutier, met with their local Liberal MP, National Revenue Minister Diane Laboutier, one day before the license was refused, and a week after a federal election was called. An election that was a tight race for Laboutier. She ended up winning by a small margin. Court documents show Cloutier donated over $2,000 to both Laboutier and the Liberal Party over the years. Laboutier's communications team says that she's unavailable for comment.
We don't think that the DFO gave Listugush reasons for the decision that could justify the infringement of the treaty right. And to a large extent, the reason given, especially in 2019, was concerns of industry, concerns of the RPPSG.
DFO declined to comment because the case is before the courts, but reasons given by the Quebec Regional Director General in the court documents cite the concerns of the Gaspé fishermen and the, quote, electoral context, by pointing to electoral guidelines that say during elections, ministers should exercise restraint before making a decision beyond the scope of current affairs. Meanwhile, Listugush argues that electoral guidelines do not have the force of law.
How do you move forward in good faith with the minister's office, with the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, with Canada, if reconciliation, recognition of Indigenous laws, if partnership are just rhetorical concepts?
But that's not to say all negotiations between Listugush and Canada have gone poorly. In April, Listugush signed a 5-year deal to develop a fishery to sell a moderate livelihood.
We think it's a very progressive deal and hopefully turns a page and allows for better discussions to happen in years to come.
Yet, the fall fishery remains unsolved. The Gaspé fishermen declined to comment because the matter is before the courts. Meanwhile, the Listugush judicial review is on hold while the judge considers the RPPSG's motion to intervene, meaning that when it comes to the courts possibly setting a legal precedent or nation-to-nation negotiations, the Gaspé Fishermen's Association insists on having a seat at the table. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Tubuktuk, known as Halifax.
Time for us to take another break, but when we come back, 2 APTN reporters win huge honors for their work on Northern Ontario's child welfare system. We'll tell you all about that. Stay with us. Welcome back. An Indigenous youth along with Treaty 1 nations in Manitoba organized a community cleanup at Thunderbird House in Winnipeg. Volunteers were on site to pick up waste and to offer free lunch to those in need. With more, here's Daryl Stranger.
7 First Nations make up Treaty 1 territory in Manitoba. On Monday, they, along with 20-year-old event organizer Emily McKinney and Swan Lake First Nation, conducted a community cleanup at the Thunderbird House in downtown Winnipeg. McKinney says a community cleanup like this can show youth the impact caring for others can have.
It's our responsibility to take care of our people, and it's our responsibility to take care of our environment and, surrounding areas. Whether, if it's just giving out an extra hand or feeding people or picking up trash and such, right? It's our responsibility so that we can, keep this area clean and safe for future generations to come and hopefully make this place a better place to be in.
Volunteers picked up trash, needles, and offered lunch to those who frequent the area. The Thunderbird House is an Indigenous community centre in the heart of Winnipeg's inner city. It's used for teaching and sharing traditional Indigenous practices, and keeping it clean and safe is a priority.
It's really important to us at Treaty 1 because Winnipeg is obviously situated right in the heart of Treaty 1, and we felt, as the original stewards of the land, that it would be really important to go out and clean up around the downtown area so that everybody feels welcome to come down.
LaGrange also added that they're looking at doing a monthly cleanup at not only the Thunderbird House, but other community sites in the city of Winnipeg that need some care as well, and they're partnering with numerous organizations within the city to make that happen.
That's exactly what we're hoping, is that this will trigger an ongoing cleanup time, maybe once a month, for us to come down and take a cleanup around this area, but also into the Forks area. We know, as I mentioned, this is Treaty 1 land, and so we really want to be responsible and proactive in keeping it clean.
Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
2 of our reporters have won Canada's highest prize for public service journalism. Colin Crozier and Kenneth Jackson took home the 2020 Missioner Award for their stories on 3 sisters who died by suicide while in Ontario's child welfare system. They are virtually accepting their award.
I've always said this reporting is not about any one reporter or even APTN. It's about the children, it's about the care, it's about what's important.
Thank you to the Michener Awards Foundation for highlighting our work this year and the work of journalists from across Turtle Island. Masi Cho.
So proud of both Colin and Kenneth. That was an incredible piece of work. You can watch that documentary, Death by Neglect, on our website, aptnnews.ca. Well, we are all out of time for your weekend news wrap. Don't forget to tune in to indigenousdaylive.ca. On Monday, we have so much in store for you. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for joining us.
2021, a concert event featuring Indigenous music, culture, and celebrations. Watch it June 20th on APTN and APTN Lumi.